You've just opened Pandora's box in your own bedroom. Picture this. You're lying in bed with your partner, perhaps after many years together. In the dim light of the bedroom, in an atmosphere of complete trust, one of you whispers, maybe even as a joke, "What if we invited someone else in?" In that second, the air in the room changes. You think it's just an innocent fantasy, a game of the mind? No, without even realizing it, you've just picked the lock on Pandora's box. The temptation to peek inside is almost irresistible. But the knowledge that once you let the contents out, you can never force them back in, is paralyzing. This topic is the greatest taboo of modern society. It is both terrifying and hypnotically attractive. Today, we will act not as judges or moralists, but as impartial analysts. Our goal is not to condemn or approve, but to dissect this complex phenomenon under the microscope of psychology. We will look inside this Pandora's box to understand what demons and what treasures are hidden there. Even Sigmund Freud spoke of our unconscious. That dark, animalistic part of our psyche he called the ID. It's a boiling cauldron of instincts and repressed desires that are always seeking a way out. And the fantasy of a third partner is one of the most powerful and dangerous breaches of this unconscious into our orderly lives. Today, we will turn on the light in this dark room and mercilessly examine everything that lies hidden. What you are about to hear won't be shown on TV or written about in glossy magazines. This will be an honest, at times uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary conversation. If you're ready for this level of depth, please hit the like button on this video right away. And if you're new here and not afraid of the truth, subscribe right now, because we're just getting started. And before we begin, it's very important for me to know our geography. Please write in the comments what city you're from. Let's see how far this difficult but important topic has spread. Part 1. The anatomy of desire. 3 true MOTS. Before we break down the consequences, we must understand the causes. Why does this idea even appear in the minds of two seemingly loving people? It's important to understand the desire for a third person is almost always a symptom, not the cause. It's a signal that there's already a crack in the foundation of the relationship, even if the house looks perfect from the outside. And usually, behind this desire lie 3 main, fundamental motives. The first and most common motive is the cure for boredom. Let's be honest. Any relationship, even the most passionate one, eventually faces what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. Simply put, we get used to everything. The brain, which was swimming in a cocktail of dopamine and oxytocin at the beginning of the romance, eventually calms down. Passion turns into warm affection, and predictability becomes synonymous with stability. And at this moment, the couple develops the illusion that the problem isn't their internal dynamic, but external monotony. They start looking for a stimulus that could shake up the system, reboot it. And in this chase for novelty, an experiment with a third person seems like the strongest, most thermonuclear dose they can get. It's like trying to rekindle smoldering embers by pouring a can of gasoline on them. The flash will be blinding, no doubt, but it's 99% likely to burn everything to the ground. The problem with this motive lies in its core mistake. The couple is trying to solve an internal problem, the loss of emotional and spiritual intimacy with the most external method possible. The novelty of a third person will only provide a short-term adrenaline rush. But when it fades, the partners will be left alone with each other, on the same scorched earth. But now, in addition to the problem of faded passion, a whole host of new, far more terrifying problems will have been added. The second motive is fulfilling a fantasy. Many of us have our own secret, cherished fantasies that we keep in the furthest corner of our minds. This is normal. It's part of our psyche. A healthy fantasy is a safe mental space where we can escape to experience certain emotions without harming anyone. But sometimes, a fantasy transforms from a secret refuge into a nagging obsession, a piece of unfinished business that demands to be acted out in the real world. Person obsessed with such an idea spends years replaying a perfect scenario in their head, a flawless movie where all participants are just actors playing by their rules. It seems to them that realizing this fantasy will bring them the ultimate pleasure, a catharsis. But they forget the most important thing. In reality, other people aren't actors. They have their own feelings, their own expectations, their own psychological traumas. And so, when this perfect movie collides with reality, it shatters into pieces. Instead of flawless passion and harmony, there is awkwardness, jealousy, disappointment. The magic of the fantasy, where everything was under control, vanishes, leaving behind only the taste of ash and the realization that reality can never live up to the idealized image in their head. And the scariest part is that once realized, this fantasy forever loses its magic, but the consequences of the experience stay with you forever. And finally, the third, most dangerous and most toxic motive is a gift to the partner. This situation arises when one of the partners doesn't actually want this experiment, but agrees to it out of fear of losing the other, in an attempt to please or keep them. On the surface, it might look like an act of supreme love and self-sacrifice. In reality, it is a form of emotional abuse and the beginning of the end. Imagine a dialogue in which one partner, feeling that the other has grown cold or distant, says something like, "I know you've always wanted this. Let's do it for you. I'm ready for anything." At that moment, something monstrous happens. The relationship transforms from a partnership of equals into a transaction, a bargain. One partner sacrifices their principles, their boundaries, their self-respect. The other accepts this sacrifice. This gift becomes a ticking time bomb planted at the very heart of the relationship. The one who agreed under duress will never forgive it. Every touch, every glance from their partner in the future will be poisoned by the memory of this humiliation. And the one who accepted this sacrifice will forever lose respect for the partner who so easily compromised themselves. This is a path that is guaranteed, without a single exception, to lead to accumulated resentment, contempt, and ultimately, the complete destruction of intimacy. Part 2. The Illusion of Paradise. Short-term benefits. Let's set aside the risks for a moment and talk about why this idea is so seductive. If it didn't promise incredible sensations, no one would even look in this direction. And indeed, in the short term, in the here and now, this experience can provide several powerful, albeit temporary, benefits. It's important to understand their nature so as not to mistake an illusion for reality. The first and most obvious plus is a massive surge of chemistry. Our brain is wired to love novelty and thrill. When a third element enters the established system of two people, a real neurochemical explosion occurs. A cocktail of three of the most potent substances is released into the bloodstream. First, dopamine, the hormone of anticipation and reward, which skyrockets from the novelty of the situation. Second, adrenaline, the hormone of stress and excitement, produced by the sense of risk and breaking a taboo. And third, oxytocin, the hormone of bonding, which can arise in the process. This cocktail temporarily brings back the couple's feelings from the very first honeymoon period, when everything was new, and their hearts pounded at just a glance. The forbidden fruit effect works flawlessly. But it's important to remember that this state is akin to drug intoxication. It is vivid, but artificial and short-lived. When the effects of the chemicals wear off, the come down will begin, and reality may turn out to be much grayer and more painful than it was before the experiment. The second potential plus, often mentioned by proponents of such experiments, is reaching a new level of trust. Theoretically, if both partners genuinely desired this experience, without any pressure, and if they were able to openly discuss all the rules, fears, and expectations, then sharing such an intense event could strengthen their bond. It's as if they jump out of a plane together and, having survived, feel like a team that has been through fire and water. However, in practice, this is an extremely rare anomaly, one case in 1,000. Why? Because such an outcome requires an almost superhuman level of emotional maturity and absolute confidence in oneself and one's partner. In 99% of cases, this experiment is perceived not as a joint adventure, but as a test of strength that one partner puts the other through. And any test is already a manifestation of mistrust. Therefore, instead of strengthening the bond, the couple most often gets proof of its fragility. And the third intriguing bonus is the opportunity to see your partner in a completely different light. When you watch your loved one interact with someone else, how they reveal a new, unexpected side of themselves, it can break familiar patterns and ignite a spark. Observing your partner's reactions, their excitement, can be a more powerful stimulus than the physical contact itself. This is the psychology of voyeurism, which allows you to temporarily step out of the role of a participant and become a spectator, deriving a special kind of pleasure from it. But here, too, there is a downside. This new vivid image of your partner, which you saw in an extreme situation, may turn out to be so attractive that their usual, everyday image will start to seem bland and boring. There is a risk of getting hooked on this thrill, constantly seeking it, while devaluing the calm and deep intimacy that you had for years. It's like trying to find the same pleasure in a quiet art house film after watching a blockbuster with special effects. The task is almost impossible. Part 3. The Road to Hell. 4 delayed action MIs if the short-term benefits are like a bright flash of fireworks. The long-term consequences are like delayed action mines that you personally plant in the foundation of your marriage. They may not detonate immediately. Sometimes months or even years pass before their destructive force fully manifests. But they will go off with almost 100% certainty. Let's look at the 4 main ones. Mine number 1 is inequality of attention. Psychologically and geometrically, a triangle is an extremely unstable figure. In a relationship of 3, it is almost impossible to maintain balance. Always, in 100% of cases, one person will receive slightly more attention, affection, or passion. Most often, a guest becomes the center of attention because they are new, interesting, and both hosts try to impress them. But it also happens that the guest shows a clear preference for one of the partners. At that moment, the second partner, even if they were the initiator of the whole thing, is instantly excluded from the common field. They become the third wheel in their own bedroom. The feeling of abandonment, jealousy, and humiliation they experience in that second is capable of poisoning the entire future relationship. The brain registers this moment as a betrayal, and it doesn't matter that everything happened by mutual consent. Our primal instincts, responsible for attachment and territory, do not understand the concept of modern views. They see a threat and sound the alarm. Mine number 2 is the ghost in the bedroom. Let's say the experiment is over. The guest has left, and you are alone again. But in reality, you will never be alone again. The image of the third person will forever settle in your bed, in your thoughts, and in your fantasies. You will inevitably, on a subconscious level, start to compare. The wife will wonder if her husband was more tender with the guest than with her. The husband will compare his wife's lack of inhibition with the behavior of the invited girl. This ghost becomes an ideal standard that a real partner can never compete with. Why? Because the guest was a temporary festive phenomenon, unburdened by daily routines, arguments, and financial problems. Comparing your permanent partner to this ghost is like comparing a family dinner on a weekday to a tasting menu at a Michelin-starred restaurant. The result of the comparison is predetermined, and it will always be unfavorable to the permanent relationship, slowly chipping away at your partner's self-esteem and your own dot. It is here that we must turn to the ideas of the great psychologist Carl Jung, who introduced the concept of the shadow archetype. The shadow is everything we repress in ourselves, our hidden desires, fears, and complexes. And this third person in the story is not just a person. They become a perfect screen onto which both partners project their shadow. A man who secretly considers his wife too proper projects his craving for vice onto the guest. A woman who lacks her husband's attention projects the image of an ideal lover onto the guest. This third person becomes the physical embodiment of everything they lack in each other. And this ghost, this shadow, stays with them forever, poisoning their real intimacy. Mine number 3 is the destruction of exclusivity. This is perhaps the most significant and irreversible risk. At the core of any deep union, whether it's a marriage or a long-term partnership, lies an unspoken agreement of exclusivity. Your intimate space is a sacred place, a sanctuary to which only the two of you have access. It is a territory where you can be completely vulnerable without fear of judgment. This exclusivity is what creates the unique bond we call intimacy. By inviting a third person, you voluntarily destroy this sacredness. You take the key to your sanctuary and give it to a stranger. Your intimate space ceases to be exclusive. It becomes a public thoroughfare. And even if it was just once, a precedent has been set. The boundary has been erased. After this experience, the couple's sense of self changes forever. Subconsciously, they both understand. What once belonged only to them is now shared with someone else. And to restore that feeling of a unique, unbreakable bond is almost impossible. It's like breaking a family heirloom. You can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will remain forever. It is for this kind of ruthless but honest analysis that people come to this channel. We don't give out simple advice. We get to the root of the matter. If this is the approach you've been looking for, now is the perfect time to subscribe and become part of our thinking community. And finally, mine number 4 is awakened jealousy. Very often, couples going into such an experiment make a pact: no jealousy. They convince themselves that they are above this primitive feeling, that their trust is so strong that jealousy is not a threat. This is a most dangerous delusion. At the moment of the event itself, under the influence of adrenaline and novelty, jealousy may indeed not manifest. The brain is too excited to analyze threats. But it awakens the next day, or a week later, when the chemical storm in your head subsides and you are left alone with your thoughts. Ancient evolutionary mechanisms responsible for pair bonding kick in. The brain begins to replay details, searching for hidden meanings in glances and touches. Maybe she liked him more? Maybe he'll be thinking about her now? This jealousy acts like a slow-acting poison. It poisons trust, breeds suspicion, and makes you see a threat where there was none before. And the scariest part is that you yourself gave this jealousy a legitimate right to exist. Part 4. When one is for and the other is against, the path to CATSTROPAC. We have been considering a situation where both partners, albeit for different reasons, have come to an agreement. But there is a scenario that is far more toxic and destructive. This is the situation where one partner is the avid initiator of the idea, and the other is categorically against it. This is a one-sided game that leads to a guaranteed disaster. Let's figure out what to do if your partner persistently pushes this idea, and for you, it is unacceptable. It's important to understand the fantasy itself is not a crime, but their persistence, their pressure, their unwillingness to hear your no. This is no longer about sexuality. It is a signal of profound disrespect for your personal boundaries, your feelings, and your emotional safety. Healthy relationships are built on the principle of enthusiastic consent. This means that both partners joyfully and without hesitation say yes. If one of you says no, or I'm not sure, and the other continues to push, persuade, or manipulate, that is a form of psychological abuse. A partner who says, if you love me, you'll agree to this, is actually sending a completely different message. My desires are more important than your feelings. They are placing their fleeting curiosity above your peace of mind and the stability of your union. Such persistence is an alarm bell that signals serious problems with respect and empathy have accumulated in the relationship. And the experiment with a third person is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, imagine that you break under this pressure and agree against your will. What will be the consequences? They are 100% predictable and absolutely devastating. First, you commit an act of self-betrayal. You go against your values, your principles. This deals a crushing blow to your self-respect. You stop respecting yourself for this weakness, and this feeling will haunt you for a very long time. Second, resentment takes root in your heart. A deep, all-consuming resentment towards the partner who forced you to go through this humiliation. This resentment will become the filter through which you view all their future actions. It will manifest in passive aggression, in cold detachment, in a lack of desire for intimacy. You will never be able to forgive them for this, because they, the closest person to you, ignored your plea for protection and used you to satisfy their whim. This experience is guaranteed to lead to the accumulation of a critical mass of resentment that will one day blow up your relationship. So what is the only correct response in such a situation? It is a firm, calm, and non-negotiable no. And here, it is extremely important to formulate your refusal correctly, so that it doesn't sound like an accusation, but like an act of protecting your relationship. You don't need to shout, "How could you even suggest such a thing?" Instead, you can say, "I love you. I value the intimacy we share. That's precisely why I will never agree to share it with anyone else. Our intimate space is the most precious thing we have, and it is for us alone. For me, this is not up for negotiation." Such a response shifts the focus from accusing the partner to protecting a shared value. You are not rejecting them. You are protecting us. If the partner continues to insist after this, it means they do not value what you are trying to protect. And then you are faced with another, more serious question. Does this relationship have a future if your fundamental values are so misaligned? Conclusion: before you open this door, think if you can ever close it. We have traveled a long and difficult path together. We have peered into the most hidden corners of the psychology of desire, dissected the motives, examined the short-term illusions, and mercilessly exposed all the delayed action mines that this risky experiment plants in the foundation of a relationship. And now we stand at the most important question. So, what is the conclusion? Is this experience an absolute evil? No. In psychology, as in life, there is nothing absolute. It is neither good nor bad. It is a choice. But it is the kind of choice after which your life and your relationship will never, under any circumstances, be the same. It is the point of no return. Let's be brutally honest. The forbidden door is not just a door to a room with new sexual sensations. It is a one-way portal. You can enter it, but you cannot exit it as the same people. You have the illusion of control. You think you are the masters of the situation, the directors of this play. But the moment you turn the key in the lock, you are not just opening a door. You are letting chaos into your carefully constructed reality. You are inviting an uncontrollable variable into your system. And from that second on, you are no longer in control of the situation. The situation begins to control you. It is impossible to restore the old order of things after this. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unhear what you have heard. You cannot erase the memory of your partner in the arms of another person. This image becomes part of your shared history, a scar on the body of your intimacy. Any long-term relationship is a complex, closed ecosystem that has spent years building its fragile balance. It has its own laws, its own rituals, its own unique language. Inviting a third person into this system is akin to introducing an invasive species into a nature reserve. This new element begins to compete for resources, for attention, for time, for emotional energy. It disrupts all the usual connections, changes the landscape, and poisons the habitat. And even when this invasive species disappears, the ecosystem will never return to its original state. It either mutates into something else or slowly dies from the eyes. Consequences of this invasion. We say that this experiment has a high price. But in what currency is the payment made? The currency here is not money. It is trust. It is the feeling of security. It is the sacredness of shared memories. You pay with the very exclusivity that made your union a fortress, a refuge from the rest of the world. By agreeing to this step, you voluntarily devalue this currency. You are essentially saying to each other, what was once ours alone, unique, can now belong to someone else. And having lost this fundamental value, it is very difficult to find a reason to stay together. Ultimately, this experiment is not about sex. It's about encountering your shadow, as Carl Jung would say. It is a ritual in which you voluntarily give a physical body and a name to your deepest fears, complexes, and repressed desires. You invite your insecurity, your jealousy, your secret dissatisfaction to sit at the table with you. You give them a chance to speak and act. This is a brutal psychological test that 99% of couples fail. Not because they are weak or bad, but because the human psyche and the foundations of long-term attachment are simply not designed for such pressures. Therefore, before you even jokingly say the phrase, before your hand reaches for this forbidden door, stop and ask yourself not the questions we talked about earlier. Ask new, much scarier ones. Not, what will I gain? But who will I become after this? Not, will I be able to survive this? But what will my love turn into after I share it with another? And not, will I be able to close this door? But will I be able to live in the new, changed world that lies on the other side? The answer to these questions will be your true choice, a choice whose consequences will last for the rest of your life together. I have shared my analysis with you and shown you all the pitfalls, but I know that the best wisdom is collective experience. So the main question for you is, what is the one single most important piece of advice you would give to a couple who is right now facing the choice of whether to open this forbidden door or not? Let's gather all our life wisdom in the comments. Your experience could save someone's family.